at times when we were afflicted by illness or by the pains of youth, this was the first person to take note and to offer support. It's quite amazing when you consider the range of activities in which Father Cornelius was involved at that time. Aside altogether from his priestly duties, he was involved in producing the operettas, producing the school magazine. He was the projectionist, not to mention the film censor. He also, as has been said already, coached the basketball team. He taught philosophy. And all the time, he could be relied on, as I know to my cost, to turn up in the most unwelcome of places and at the most unwelcome of times in his capacity as Dean of Discipline. I'm still convinced that Father Cornelius could detect two miscreants in two different places at the same time. It wasn't until I got to Melleray that I understood the concept of bilocation. Actually, I was amused at one point during Father Bonaventure's comments earlier on when he referred to the hound of heaven. I had a rather irreverent thought about it. It occurred to me that my behaviour in Melleray and the behaviour of several people who were in this room was like the man that Francis Thompson was talking about. He said, I fled him down the nights and down the days, I fled him down the arches of the years, I fled him down the labyrinthine ways of my own mind. That was us running from Father Cornelius. Father Francis succeeded Father Cornelius in the late 60s and continued the tradition of firmness and fairness, which was the hallmark of Melleray. I'll mention some others quickly because I know that Pat is getting excited here. Pat Keever's inevitably springs to mind. Pat was an enthusiastic, excellent teacher whose Latin classes were very lively affairs, full of humour, and yet they were packed with information. Occasionally it was pain. Pat had a habit of breaking into the classroom with his gown billowing behind him, and he would throw himself into the winter chair at the top of the classroom to compose himself for the coming fray. He was cured of that particular habit on the day that the chair collapsed underneath him. He was deposited in a very unprofessorial pose on the floor. I hope you didn't offer any lasting effect, because I can now admit to you, 21 years later, the legs of the chair had been detached from the seat. Use a phrase which has become popular in business circles in Ireland recently. I deny any involvement in it. Con Buckley is remembered for his history and geography classes and for the perspective he gave us on the time and space that we occupied. Dan Deneen, the mathematical wizard of Melleray, led us through the intricacies of everything from algebraic functions to linear programming. I know that Dan also has a keen eye for horseflesh. Perhaps now that we can back horses legally, he might be more forthcoming with tips than he was in those days. Tom Tronnelly, of course, is also there, teaching English and geography. Memory serves me rightly. Oliver Broderick, and I've been talking to him during the meal. Oliver ruled his laboratory with an iron discipline, and yet he could quell even the most unruly of us with no more than a few well-chosen words. His enthusiasm for physics and chemistry was infectious, and it left many of us with a lasting interest in the sciences. He also, as has been mentioned already, gave of his own time and energy in coaching the basketball team, or I beg your pardon, coaching the debating team. And that, I think, is an aspect of his work, and indeed in common with several of his colleagues, which went largely on some of the time. I think we all took it for granted. And if we didn't show our gratitude at the time, we now belatedly do so. Brendan Breen can't be forgotten for the sense of Irishness and pride in Irish culture and heritage that he gave us. His task was continued by Father Vincent, who introduced us to Breen Query, in which it was said of the heroes that in dispatching their enemies, the windshed Kaunos, a similar fate awaits anyone who fell asleep in Father Vincent. He could lob a timber duster at the far end of the room with incredible accuracy to take the head off the miscreant. That still left a very deep impression on me. I speak both literally and metaphorically. For a time, the late and much admired Father Killian was given the task of teaching us religious knowledge. He had a novel, perhaps an orthodox message for the day, and he listened to the greatest of heresies, unperturbed, and then demolished them with his formidable logic. Father Ignatius later had the same task. Father Luke, Father Leonard were spiritual directors, and not an easy job, given the heathen qualities of some of their charges. Also fondly recalled is the late Father Stephen, who was president of the college at the time. I have to make a special mention of Jack Fraser. He's already been mentioned here before. Jack had a particular influence on me. He's a man who would never take no for an answer, and who forced all of us to excel ourselves. And I can still recall Jack in the late 60s, when, if you pardon me saying so, he was already past the first flush of youth, doing a one-handed handspring in the gymnasium. I couldn't do that at 17, and I couldn't do it with two hands at 39. So it's nice to see, Jack, that you're still looking so well. There are other names which echo down the years like a roll call of honour. Some of them have already been mentioned, but I'll mention them briefly again. Hugh Colvin, Charlie Ryder, Jack McCarthy, Bill Dwyer, Matt Foley, James Flanagan, Frank Galvin, and from the monastery, Father Eric, Father Alphonsus, Father Augustine, Father Brandon, Father Clement. I also have fond memories of a man whose great humour endears him to the students, although he wasn't on the staff of the college, and that's Brother Declan. He was the electrician. And I can still recall the look of injured innocence on his face, and his assistant, after cutting through a live wire on Brendan's assurance that the fuse was out, brandished the half-melted pliers at him. I deliberately left to last a man who has made perhaps the most lasting impression of all, and a number of other people have confirmed my view on this. All that can be said of the other teachers applies equally to him, but somehow he stands apart in the memories and affections of those who have the privilege to have been taught by him. I refer to Brendan Keeley, allegedly teacher of English, and in fact a tutor for life. It was he who instilled in us a love and appreciation of the written word, particularly poetry. I don't believe there is a greater gift that any teacher can give a student. Some of the verses which he encouraged us to read over 20 years ago are still fresh in the mind. It's still a source of pleasure. From Milton to Nash, Shakespeare to Lear, he brought us on a wide-eyed voyage of wonder and discovery. It mattered little whether it was on the course or not. It was prevalent followed wider syllabus. That alone would have been enough for any teacher, but not for Brendan. He embarked in his own time on a series of lectures on musical appreciation, and he unlocked an Aladdin's cave of music, and those of us who entered, I think several of us have remained there. For myself, there are pieces of music which, when I hear them today, transport me straight back to those days and leave me with a feeling of gratitude to Brendan for trying to instill in a bunch of scruffy delinquents an appreciation of some of the finer things in life. Perhaps it's best summed up by saying that whereas we owe to some of the other teachers, all of the other teachers and staff of the congregation, something of our capacity to earn living, to Brendan we owe something of our capacity to enjoy life. I omitted to mention earlier on, it seems to have become a habit of the evening, Mick O'Connell. Mick, that man of high stature and melodious accent, came to Melleray fresh from college. We learned a lot about maths from Mick. Mick learned a lot about Gurriers from us. I hope didn't find the experience too unpleasant. I think none of us, as we walk through I am winding up, Pat, yeah. None of us, as we walked through the gates of Melleray for the last time, had any inkling as to where the road might take us, or what we might encounter along the way. But I do think that, with the benefit of hindsight, we could not have asked for a better preparation than that which Melleray gave us. For our colleagues who followed the path to the priesthood, Melleray provided the forge, the melting pot, and the mold in which was shaped their spiritual lives, although perhaps their spiritual cradle was occasionally rocked by their more raucous secular colleagues. Finally, there must be moments in the life of every teacher when the enormity of the task becomes daunting, when the ingratitude, perhaps impermeability, downright unpleasantness of the student makes the effort seem futile. My hope this evening is that you will be reminded, as such be needed, of the value of the task that you perform, and of the fact that your pupils, unappreciative as they may be at the time, will in time come to appreciate what it is that you've done for them. That may indeed be several years later, when perhaps in times of crisis they find themselves having to rely on resources that you have provided for them. And those resources, they may hitherto have been unaware of their value, or perhaps even their very existence. To each and every one of you, to every lay and cleric, whether here or not, who had a part in our shaping, I thank you deeply and sincerely, and I wish you every success in your continued endeavours. Finally, just as has been said already, a brief word of thanks to the people who organised this evening, Pat, Brian and Father Cornelius. We owe them a great deal. Let's hope it won't be another 20 years before we meet again.
Thank you, Michael, for that most comprehensive and apprehensive and extended representation of our views as students in the seminary. Thank you indeed. We've one category of colleague which we do not wish to forget this evening, although they cannot be with us, and those, I'm afraid, those are sadly departed. And I just briefly want to jog your memory for a moment of the memories that you may have of these people. Father Stephen, Father Killian, Father Ailey and Father Clement of the community have gone to their reward in the sky. But of the students, Des O'Connor, Anthony O'Connor, Anthony Feeney, James Kennedy, Nicky Hearn, PJ Doody, John Tobin, Donald O'Brien and Mike Flanagan have also departed from our number. Eamon Ryan, thank you. Finally, I would just like to thank all of the people who worked so willingly and enthusiastically behind the scenes to get us all here this evening, and provided of their professional assistance in many, many cases. To Brian for your friendship and keenness to make us welcome when we arrived in the UK. Thank you very much indeed. And also for your bright ideas. I hope in future the next bright ideas don't have so much work attaching to them. Father Cornelius for your interest and support in the project. To my secretary Debbie, who never invited so many men to dinner and lived to tell the tale. To Bernard Holmes for arranging the professional representatives which are going to be on display. Where, Bernard? Oh, here afterwards. Thank you very much. There will be order forms to have the photographs, and many of you, I'm sure, will be keen to see what you looked like 20 years ago. To Jerry Crowley and Paul Oliver Curran for their very generous donations, which assured that the evening would be a success. To Charlie Vaughan, our very able treasurer. Dan Deneen always said it could count. Thank you, Charlie, very much indeed. It was tremendous to have an anchor man in Ireland. You did a great job. Pat Keevers for his support throughout, particularly at the early stages, and for gathering his teaching colleagues. Thank you, Pat. And there is always a line of management which is called into play in organisations such as this, and I really want to thank our sterling group of helpers who called, cajoled, and did many other things to get you here this evening. I refer particularly to Martin Burke, Tom Capeless, Michael Condon, who, by the way, was possibly our most successful sportsman from Melleray, having captained London Irish for several years, and is still actively involved. Stand up, Mike, and take a bow. To John Priddy, Stephen Evans, Gerald McGorman, Tim O'Connor, John Rafferty, Jerome Ryan, Liam Walsh, and all of those who helped those. Thank you very much indeed. To Miss O'Riordan of the hotel staff, who was absolutely professional in all our dealings throughout, and to Aidan and David, the floor managers this evening, who I thought not only presented a beautiful meal, but did it so efficiently. Thank you very much. To Tony Courtney for arranging the photographers and the video, and I think this video is going to be quite a keepsake. I'm not quite sure. Tony, are you prepared to tell us how much it's selling for? Retail or wholesale? Not here. £15.
Good.
Any reduction on £15 or any increase?
Go in.
Okay. Well, Tony is the man to contact to order a copy of the video. And finally, to all, oh yes, of course, yes, who wish to be remembered this evening and who wished you a very enjoyable evening. I would also like to thank all our speakers this evening for their thought-provoking, provocative thoughts, and to Michael Rodney, of course, for representing us so well. The last item of business is to congratulate Mr. Michael O'Connell on his landslide victory to win the coveted position of President of our inaugural Melleray Old Boys Golf Society. Our first competition tees off tomorrow at 11:30 at Harbour Point, and Packers and Sharks are welcome. Golfers leave the hotel at 10:30 by coach. Thank you, Michael. That concludes the formal aspects of the evening. I now want you to relax a little further and enjoy one of Ireland's most experienced and professional entertainers for the next 30 to 40 minutes or so. But before I do that, the bar will be open right through until 12 o'clock, and I'd ask you to stay at your tables and order with table service so that we can maintain the thrust of the evening throughout without any break. I also, just before I call Sean to the podium, would like to wish you all health and success for the next 20 years. I would urge you again to circulate and reintroduce yourselves and enjoy yourselves. And join me in the following toast: Melleray Reunion or Alam Shaharish. Melleray Reunion or Alam Shaharish. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. Please give a warm welcome to Mr. Sean O'Shea. Thank you.
Heard over the past hour or so, Mount Melleray must have been the perfect school with the perfect teachers and the perfect pupils. So give yourselves a big, big round of applause. And the reason we decided to get up 6 or 10 inches so that I could look down and have a look at all your halos glistening in the video light over there, you know. But on my way in, I noticed a fair amount of Mercs and big Volvos and Grenadas out in the car park, and I bet you if we had a kind of an inquiry, we'd discover at least one little offshore company down there somewhere. Human nature, there's one red face already. Oh, mother of God. We're going to start off tonight with a little story about a fellow who was never in Mount Melleray, a member of the travelling community. And you know, the travelling community, look at the fellow from Timoleague that can never stop talking. He's still wondering why Cork didn't win the Munster final, and more than anyone he should know. But anyway, Toad Bugger, go over by point 27, don't be interrupting me. One of us is enough to be acting the agent. But I have to answer Pat Gleeson about the Munster final this year. There was a Tipperary man coming down on the train the night of the All-Ireland, And he was boasting up, hip, and come on, Babs, and Tony, and this kind of thing, and there was a Corkman sitting very mutely in the other, which is unusual for a Corkman, sitting very mutely on the other side of the carriage, and he couldn't take any more of it passing or link, but he said, see, Tipperary, me asked to see. 2 All-Irelands is 17 years to see we'd win that in a fortnight. So where's Pat? He's still around. But after the Munster final this year, the theme song of all Tipperary teams in the future will be the men behind the wire, because it took 1,000 Tipperary men to beat Cork this year. But anyway, I was good. That's true. And of course, those of you who follow football or hurling will be wondering what happened to Cork this year. Well, the situation is that once we lose one, now we're not interested in the other, because really to have any kind of a year at all, you want to win the two. It'll be a long time before that will happen in Tipperary. But anyway, we've said it all now. But there was this particular travelling man, a member of the travelling community, and you know, the travelling community have their own little ways of making the odd bob too. And this fella, his angle was, he'd sign on for the Dole on a Monday in Youghal, on a Tuesday he'd go towards Lingford, on a Wednesday he'd reach Mullingar, Friday he'd be up around Dublin somewhere, and he was drawing Dole in 4 different places at the one time. He almost had his own offshore company for keeping all the Dole in it. And somebody said to him, is there any... Now I know Mount Melleray is the same as every other place, because if it was like as ye were a while ago, they'd all be sitting down. But anyway, as I was saying, somebody said to him, you know, he says, if you go to the Gael stuff, he says, to get the Dole there, it's the only place where you can get the Dole on a Saturday. So your man says, but I know Irish. But he says, that doesn't matter. He says, a couple of simple things, he said. They'll ask you, cod is animal, and you'll say, Diarmid O'Drish Dole. They'll ask you, cod is Oscott, and you'll say, Cahar Corky, that'll do. And then he said, they'll probably ask you, cod is Eastart, and you can say, Quaid Cahar Blian. And he says, you'll get it, then he says, there'll be no more questions. So your man was practicing all the week, Diarmid O'Drish Dole, Cahar Corky, Cahar Blian, Diarmid O'Drish Dole. And Saturday morning, he was up inside the Dole office in Connemara, first man in the queue, the official called him in, he says, cod is animal. And your man says, Diarmid O'Drish Dole. Because he says, cod Oscott. And he says, Cahar Corky. And man's not about the Joe. And he says, August, he says, cod is Easter. And he says, Quaid Cahar Blian. And he says, August, the van. And your man says, Toyota Hiace. I have to tell you that there are 3 different, as you are in Cork tonight, and I'm sure most of you, Steve, are there many of these from Cork, or are they all foreigners? Half and half. Well, for those of you who are not from Cork, there's 3 different kinds of Corkmen. First of all, is the Corkman from the city here, and last June 12 months he was out in Rome and he was shouting, ole, 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 ole. And the following September he was above in Croke Park following the hurling team and he was, ole, 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 ole. And then there's myself and my colleagues and Steve there, we were the West Corkmen. We followed the big ball game. And ole, 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 to us would be our mothers chasing the pullets around the farmyard and go, where were you see with a drop on hen? And then there's the 3rd kind of Corkman. And he's the Corkman who goes to Christian College or presentation, and he usually starts playing with the oval ball, and he finishes up in one of the associated banks. And such a man was a man called Ralphie Bradley. And he was appointed to be the first manager of the Allied Irish Bank, which was setting up in a place called Port Magee in the County Kerry. And there he was inside the counter the first day, wondering if anybody would come in with a bit of money. When there was a Kerry man came in with a navy blue suit in him and 2 Jordan cups in it, and he walked up to the counter and he says, the bank manager, he says, do you take money? And he said, actually, that's what we're here for. But to say, will you mind it for me? And the Corkman says, not alone will we mind it, my good man. He said, but we'll give you interest on it. And the Kerry man says, I don't care whether we're interested in it or not, as long as you mind it for me. He said, that will be there when I come back. So the Corkman said, you can rest assured, he said, we'll mind it for you. So he said, give me your money. So he took it out of his front pocket, out of his back pocket, out from under his knees, out from under his Wellingtons, and by the time that it all counted, there was £15,447 and 2 new pence there. The bank manager went home at lunchtime with the wife and said, Cynthia, darling, he says, we'll be back in Crosshaven yachting in no time at all. He said, if the deposits keep coming at the rate they are. The following morning he went down to the bank, in comes the Kerryman again, cycled up the middle of the bank. He said, I never knew you would drive in. He said, I have more money for you today. And by the time they had it counted, there was nearly £12,000 more there. The bank manager went home. Cynthia, he said, we're almost there. He said, £12,000 more today. He said, you won't believe it. So she said, Ralphie, darling, she said, I'd be cautious. She said, you wouldn't know where he was getting it. It could be ill-gotten gains. It could be running a brothel or something. God bless her, she knew nothing about Kerryman. They'd pay for nothing. He said, I'll check it out to see where he's getting the money, if he comes in again. So the following morning, anyway, in comes the Kerryman with more money. And the bank manager said to him, he says, look, he says, my good man, he said, before I take the money, he said, I've got to find out where are you getting it. So he said, well, it's a secret actually. He said, but I'll tell yourself. He said, I'm a gambling man. He said, I'd back 2 flies going up a wall. As a matter of fact, he said, I'll have a little bet with yourself, he said. I'll bet you £1,000, he said, you have a black pimple somewhere in your body. And Ralphie thought for a while, he said, you're on. So he went home to the wife anyway, he said, Cynthia, darling, he said, I have this bet, he said, with the Kerryman, he said, that I have no black pimple in my shoe, he said, I'm as clean as the driven snow. When he went to bed that night, he woke up about every 15 minutes and I'd look at himself in the mirror, and if there was a black head as much as appeared, he'd drown it with what we have, TCP or something like that. He got up the following morning and he showered himself, bathed himself, put on 4-7-11, put on after spice, put on everything, because that was the day that the bet was to be settled. He went down the street, he wouldn't go the same side as him for safety. He went into the bank and he was long inside it all, and the Kerryman came in, accompanied by a little man with a small black coat and a black hat and a little black suitcase. And he said to the bank manager, he said, we're going to the back office. He said, what? He said, you must take off every stitch, you know. He said, because, he said, if I find a black pimple anywhere, he said, you must give me £1,000. So they went in anyway, put the bank manager up on the table. The Kerryman says, Bundit the coat, and he took off his coat. Bundit the lane, and he took off his shirt. Bundit the breech, and he took off his pants. Bundit the stocking. And when he took the last stocking off him, didn't the Kerryman fall? Not the Kerryman, but the bill man that was with him. Didn't he fall down, collapse beside him on the floor? The bank manager, my God, he said, it's bad enough, he says, being in my birthday suit here in the bank. He said, but what is wrong with that man? And it was the Kerryman, John, whom I actually man. He said, there's your £1,000, he said, my good friend, he said, I'll bet a £5,000 with that man, he says, that I was the bank manager in the Port McGee Bank, stacked naked up on the table 12 o'clock Wednesday morning. We're going to sing a song for you. And it's a Tipperary song as a way of a peace offering to Pat up there at the top, and this is the key of G. Oh, the ships that sail in half an hour across the broad Atlantic, my friends and parents on the shore, with grief and sorrow frantic, I'm just about to sail away in the good ship Dan Melleray. The anchor's weighed and the gangway's up, and I'm leaving Tipperary. So goodbye Mick, goodbye Pat, goodbye Kate and Mary. The anchor's weighed and the gangway's up, and I'm leaving Tipperary. In my portmantle here I have some cabbage, greens and bacon, and if you think you can beat that, of course you are mistaken. And if the ship lays pitch and toss with half a dozen farthings, I'll roll me bundle on me back and I'll walk to Castle Garden. So goodbye Mick, goodbye Pat, goodbye Kate and Mary. The anchor's weighed and the gangway's up, and I'm leaving Tipperary. And now the steam is blowing off, I'm going far away. I'm bound for New York City, boys, 3,000 miles away. And when we reach that foreign shore and land at Ellis Island, I'll raise my glass and smoke my pipe, for Yankee land is my land. So goodbye Mick, goodbye Pat, goodbye Kate and Mary.